Okay, so these glasses change how I look at the world. And as you can tell, they probably don't improve my vision because I don't wear glasses, and these would just make me bump into walls. But they were my grandfather's glasses, and he used them to see, which is probably a good thing. So my grandfather was Eddie Wilner, and this was just one of the many stylish things he wore, pretty fashionable glasses. So I remember as a young child, he had this like a blue big chair in the corner of the living room, and it had this remote where you could like make it go higher or lower and it would reclining. So I just remember looking at him with these glasses on, and he was like, he just, every time I talked to him, he would just have a ball like changing the switches and pressing the dials, but it's always with these glasses on, and it's just like, imagine these glasses like going everywhere in your frame of vision when you're like a 4-year-old. It's kind of interesting. But I remember him telling me a very important story in these glasses, and that was his story growing up. So in 1940, he was born in 1930s, but in 1940, when he was 11 years old, his parents sent him on the train to Belgium because the Nazis were closing in on Jews in Germany. So his parents were trying to protect him, so they sent him away to Belgium to try to escape. When he arrived at the train station in Belgium, he didn't have any people there or family there in Belgium. It was just some random family that decided to pick him up and adopt him essentially into his family, or into their family. So he worked in Belgium in the vineyards. He learned Dutch there for 2 years, just with this family that decided to pick him up at the train station. And then 2 years later, things got bad again. The Nazis were closing in on Belgium, so his parents actually fled Germany, picked him up from Belgium, and moved to France, where they hid out in it's kind of a long story, but they hid out in the basement of a Catholic priest's family. Very hard thing to do, because if you get caught, that's the end of you. So they went to France as kind of a last resort. This was their end of the line deal here. And they hid out in the basement of this family. And unfortunately, the French Vichy government, which was kind of a front for the Nazis, went and found them out. And they discovered this Jewish family living in the basement. So, as you can tell, it's probably not a good continuation of the story. So, after that, my family, or the Eddie Wilner family, was sent on trains to Paris to go later on to Auschwitz. My grandmother, or my grandfather's mother, so Eddie's mother, since she was a woman, was sent directly to the gas chambers with the rest of her family. And that was, of course, heartbreaking for Eddie and his father. Eddie was just 14 years old at the time, and he didn't know what was going on, but he knew he had to keep going with his father. But that was it. That was the rest of his family that was still alive. So at Auschwitz, after a year of hard labor, his father and Eddie were sent to Gross Rosen, which is another concentration camp. So after 2 years at Gross Rosen, his father turned 50, and he was sent to the gas chambers as well, because after 50 years old, apparently you're of no more use. So that was the point where Eddie was completely alone. He had no family left. No grandparents, no sisters, no brothers, no parents, No one. And it was, as you can imagine, a very big shock. And he was hard labor. He worked in, after Gross Rosen, he was shipped over to Langenstein-Zwieberge, where he worked on the V2 rocket tunnels. And he got a slice of potato per day and maybe a bowl of water for blowing up mines to hide the V2 rockets.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, step back from this kind of very emotional story. He's in his chair with these glasses, you know, and it's kind of something unique about him, that he can tell this very emotional story with still kind of, to a like 6-year-old, with still kind of interspersing humor into it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things I remember about these glasses. Okay, so obviously, I don't want to take up all the time here in the film.
Go until you're done.
But obviously, you probably want to hear how this story ends, which is kind of a happy ending, so that's good. So, well, I mean, nothing can be a happy ending. But, so Eddie Wilner, he was 18 at the time at Langenstein-Zwieberge, working on these V2 rockets, and this was 1945. They heard the Allied planes overhead, the tanks were rolling in, the Nazis were scared what to do next. They were just didn't know. So Eddie had an option: go on a death march away from Langenstein-Zwieberge, or stay there. And he didn't want to stay there. Who wants to stay there? So he went on the death march. And the death marches were terrible. And in one case, Eddie went on one, and out of 4,000 people, there were 26 that survived. And they kept on going for months on end. And they weren't fed, they were pushed into ditches, shot with dogs. It's terrible. But so Eddie and a group of his closest friends at the camps decided to escape on this death march, because this was the last option, because they knew something was up. So Eddie and 6 of his other friends, closest friends at this camp, decided to run away at the right moment. They didn't know what moment it was, but they decided to escape. So when they passed through this small German town called Welbsleben, they were over a bridge, and Allied planes started to fly over. So the Nazi police said, "Hey, under the bridge, now." And that was their moment, because the Nazis were in disarray, the people didn't know what was going on, so they darted out of there. So 7 people under a bridge, which is leading to a river, and they're trampling in this river, and 5 guys got shot and got caught by the dogs. 2 guys survived. One is Eddie, the second is Michael, who I'm named after. And that's the story of Eddie Wilner and these glasses.
Thanks, Michael. Great job.
Oh, actually, can I read his favorite
Absolutely.
quote? He had this like in every room. So it's called "Press On" by Calvin Coolidge. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent.